Boone, North Carolina. The week he found the first 107 acres, he bought it, because this was holy ground for him, and it felt good. He added more land over time and built a farm from scratch with hard work, patience, and a lot of help from people who believed in him. He just called the show real because it wasn't anything special. They smashed rocks to make tools, bent wood to make baskets, and rubbed sticks together until fire appeared as a way to build. Even nettles and wild persimmons were cooked and dried by them. From that spot, Eustace helped people see how they fit into the bigger picture. He thought that life today was too busy, loud, and crowded for people to notice what was going on around them. At Turtle Island, though, they would start to see each other again. It washed away the dust in their minds to stand in the cold rain and watch a spider spin its web or a leaf drift by in silence. Sadly, all of this goes away in the blink of an eye when things get tough. When the storm hit Turtle Island, Eustace, Conway was relaxing after a long day on a wooden sled in front of the horse barn at Turtle Island Preserve. Triplet, North Carolina, was very hot on June 27, 2013. He could see the world he had built by hand, including the paths he had cleared, the buildings he had put up without using tools, and the logs he had hauled. A lot of people came from far away to see it, to learn how to live without grocery stores, wires, or bills. It wasn't funny or warm on Turtle Island that week, though. It was closed because safety officials in the area said it wasn't safe. They brought up health codes, safety rules, and permits that had not been filed. Turtle Island is supposed to be a small green bowl hidden in a busy, paved-over world. He thought about neighbors and tourists looking down from the ridges at what the earth used to look like. At least that was his plan when he bought the land again in 1987. He chased it for years. He didn't have any clothes on when he moved into the woods for the first time at age 17. He lived off of what he could grow, catch, or build. He even teaches interns how to fish, dive into trash, and find good food that grocery stores throw away. He now wears jeans and a t-shirt. When the cameras finally came out, Eustace agreed to have his life filmed from Mountain Men on the History Channel. He thought TV was awful, but he also knew that it kept Turtle Island going, so it felt weird. Because, well, that kind of place doesn't just run on ideas. To get help, it needs interns, trainees, tax-exempt status, and more campers who pay to stay and learn. It might have meant being a part of a system Eustace didn't trust, and that's where things went wrong. Turtle Island's crack. Remember how we said Turtle Island needed Mountain Men to keep going? Someone made a report about them, so Watauga County sent inspectors to the house. Many houses, sheds, workspaces, and bathrooms were built without permits, and they didn't meet building codes. After this was found out, the county gave him 3 options. Make every building up to code, hire a professional to show that they did, and then file the permits. If that doesn't work, tear them down. Eustace didn't see any of those options, but the place he had built his life on was now stuck in paperwork, and Turtle Island's future was uncertain. Why did this happen in the first place? In the summer of 2012, someone called Joe Foreman, who was in charge of planning for the county. A week later, someone sent him an envelope. Along Turtle Island, it showed roads, houses, and wiring with colors, symbols, and small details. At that point, the pressure began. People who watched Mountain Men might have thought that Eustace lived in the middle of nowhere, like the other guys. Turtle Island is not cut off from the rest of the world, though. It's just outside of Boone, not far from the Tennessee border. Boone is also not a small town. There are about 17,000 people living in the town, but that number doubles when school is in session. Smooth roads and big houses tucked into the trees are easy to find close to the edge of town. If it's a sunny day, you might be able to hear car going by because the Blue Ridge Parkway turns close. However, things start to change as soon as you hit the dirt road that leads to Turtle Island. After going through the gate, there is a small stream that you have to cross. After you cross it, the trees thin out and a big field appears. There is a corn crib, an open kitchen, a simple eating area, and an old-style blacksmith shop all around that clearing. The barn is made of thick logs that were cut and put together without nails. The roof is made of hand-split shingles that were all shaped by hand. If you're asking where the name Turtle Island came from, it has to do with stories. An old native story about a turtle that was so big that it carried people who had survived a flood on its back after the world had submerged. But people in charge in the area had a different opinion. They said it wasn't just about new or old ideas or ways of doing things. Rules were involved. One time, Joe Furman said, they tried to talk things out, but it didn't work out. Things quickly fell apart. So, in September 1912, he came back with 2 cops and a warrant. They looked through Eustace's house and found that it didn't have any water or sewer lines. Also, all of the wood had been milled at Turtle Island. The wood also wasn't graded and marked in a warehouse. As they dug deeper, they learned that the small office on the property was powered by solar cells. Some students from Appalachian State University built a small hydropower system nearby to keep the lights on. The wiring was a red flag, but it worked. It was said that the circuit boxes were wrong. They also saw a wood stove that had a pipe. That went under a metal roof instead of through it. But this wasn't the only thing on their list that they marked as important. They said that the outhouses had never been allowed by the government, and that some of the cabins weren't properly attached to their stone bases. The county expert wrote down 78 pages of notes on everything. He came to the conclusion that most of the houses were not safe and weren't sound. The land had to be cleared, and the people were told to leave, he said. It was also clear from his conclusion that having anyone stay there, even interns, was dangerous. But Eustace didn't agree. He told them they were missing something. How could he teach people how to live in a primitive way in houses that came from a book? You don't teach people how to survive in places with air conditioning. As you stand in a building made for code books, you don't show someone how to live off the grid. He cared that people were making things by hand, working things out and learning how to live close to the ground. Eustace stopped moving for a second and looked at the buildings that he had helped to build. Then he said something that made sense. Since the beginning of time, thousands or even hundreds of years ago, people have been building homes. What was the point of not being able to build his own house without being given a list of rules in his own country, on his own land, with his own trees? He thought this was taking away his basic rights. Whaley's report was wrong, so Conway put up a set of interviews with certified building inspector Drew Kelly on YouTube. Kelly looked at the buildings and said that most of them were made better than what was required. No, they didn't follow the rules of today. But they weren't modern either, since they weren't built for that reason. Eustace couldn't stop thinking about how it all began, and the time seemed off. He couldn't get rid of the thought that things went wrong after the first season of Mountain Men aired. No one had been coming up to the hill before that to ask questions. But now there were cameras set up so that many people could watch the episodes of the show. The show was never just about cutting down trees or chasing elk. It was about getting by. At times, that was just nature. It was sometimes the system. He said, "I live for a living," right there in the first show. After the second episode, called Mayhem, the fight was shown on TV. He checked his mailbox and saw a letter. He took his knife out of his pocket, cut the envelope's top, and read the words out loud: "Motion to claim property that is free." He thought it was crazy, and the lawyer paid the sheriff to serve him. He also thought they looked like they were after his land. He showed the letter and said, I just got a message that your life is over. The tone is set by the speaker, who sounds like the government is after Turtle Island. For the rest of the season, Eustace and his workers work to raise money by splitting firewood and fence rails to lift the lien from Eustace's land. He says that he has always been able to live off of his land, but it's always been hard for him to pay the tax. In the last episode, this is the end. Conway and a friend ride into Boone on a horse instead of one of the cars on the farm. How would Turtle Island have ended? It looked like Eustace had something to prove when he rode up to Boone. They both did. He got to the building just in time. It was called his last fight on the show, but it wasn't the court or the tax office that made things worse. The real turning point happened when a guest named Kimberly Baker came to visit years before. What did happen? Baker moved from Wilmington to Turtle Island in August 2005. She went on a vacation with other teachers from North Carolina. At the preserve's gate, a group was getting together for an orientation. A member of Conway's staff pulled out a sling and started throwing stones at the group. Baker was hit in the face by a rock that went flying backwards and went blind in one eye. A case was filed as a result. A settlement of $400,000 was made between Conway and two of her employees. They looked at each other and worked together, showed it. The Mountain Men Show. You'll be better off if you go after it. There was no plan for Tom to be on TV. It was never in his mind to be famous or ask for a camera crew. A new show on the History Channel called Mountain Men came looking for real people living old-fashioned, off-grid lives in 2012. That changed everything. They chose not to have players. It was important to them that people still followed old customs. And they were interested in Tom's life. His world was made in the middle of nowhere, away from the busy world of today. It was a rare find. What's the Mountain Men Show about? Mountain Men is a TV show about tough adventurers and people who have left city life to live in the great woods and learn how to use all the things that nature provides, like food that grows naturally and shelters that people build themselves. Some people find winter in North America scary, but these mountain men love the wild and all of its dangers and pleasures. There are always problems to solve, but the joy of doing it yourself and getting by on your own is great for people who want to be in charge of their own lives. The group will have to deal with hardships and fight for their lives. With a cold winter and a welcome spring that brings out the top predators to protect their young, these mountain men are well aware that everything they eat will be very hungry. After a long time of slumber with little food, people in this group are creative, persistent, and determined, and they can handle the toughest scenarios while showing viewers how they deal with everyday issues. On top of that, the show shows surprises, like an early, unplanned winter with record low temperatures in places from Alaska to North Carolina. When it snows a lot, or in the Arctic, engines break down, fingers get frostbite, and there's a daily fight that won't end until the snow melts. In this case, freedom means working hard. History tells us that both young blood and old hands have to work hard to live in the wild. Even when nature throws the worst chances at them, may the best men always be alive. Tom was shy and didn't want to put on a show with his life, but he agreed that what they filmed had to be real after giving it some thought. Mountain Men on the History Channel is a great show that most people can learn a lot from. Mountain Men is the show for you if you're even slightly interested in learning basic outdoor survival skills, like how to hunt, tan, trap, and track. It's not just the great tips and tricks that make the show so great, though. It's the people who present them. One of the show's most loved faces is Tom Orr. Marty Maiorato, Morgan Beasley, Jason Hawk, Margaret Stern, Jake Herrick, and Mike Horstman were some of the other actors on the show. Charles Tucker, Kyle Bell, Rich Lewis, George Michaud, and Brent Jameson. As soon as Mountain Men started airing, Tom became a fan favorite. People loved his deep understanding of how to stay alive, his hard-won skills, and the way he lived his life, which seemed to come from another time. People were interested. What kind of person could be outside in the snow, skin an elk with simple tools, and laugh by a wood fire, all in the same day? Tom was amazing because he never tried to please other people. As the show became more famous, it got more attention. Tom became known around town, and people came to look for his house. A lot of letters and emails came in. Some fans just wanted to talk to Tom, while others sent him gifts or told him how his music had changed their lives. Mountain Men is a pretty popular show, so its stars, like Tom Orr, have pretty good lives, even though they don't interact with modern society much. Tom Moore's net worth is thought to be $200,000. He got that money by selling his colored clothes and moccasins, and by appearing on the TV show. This was a lot for a man who used to live alone and never spoke. Tom was grateful for the help, but it was clear that being famous wasn't easy. It was getting harder to keep the easy life going. There was a change going on inside him, even though he smiled for the cameras and was friendly with all of his fans. Tom was getting old. His body was tired from working in the mountains for decades, as well as the rodeo. Every winter was worse than the last, and every season brought new pains and aches. There were also signs that Tom Orr was starting to slow down, even though he never said it out loud. The terrible accident. By the time Tom Orr was 70 years old, he was a star. A man who had lived off the land, did well in the woods, when most people wouldn't have made it through the week. Tom's life took a sharp turn when something terrible happened. What began as a normal day in the wilds of Montana turned into a moment that would change Tom Orr's life forever and start the most painful part of it. It was the middle of winter, when every breath felt like ice and every step was hard. There was a lot of snow on the roof of Tom's house, which happens a lot in the mountains. It's possible for too much weight to do real damage. Tom chose to go up and clear off the extra snow that morning. She told him to wait because the weather might get better and someone might be able to help later. Tom, on the other hand, never liked to wait. He put on his old boots, grabbed his ladder, and used his shovel to climb up. He had done it a lot of times before, but this time would be different. Tomas tripped and fell off the roof. It wasn't a small fall. He hit his back and side hard on the frozen ground. Getting hit took all of his breath away. He wasn't even able to move for a short time. It's still not clear what caused the fall. The ladder might have fallen. He thought the roof wasn't as cold as it was. Or maybe it broke at the wrong time, after years of giving his body everything it could handle. She ran outside as soon as she heard the crash. Tom was moaning and trying to get up, but it was clear that he was in pain. He said he was fine, but Nancy could tell he wasn't. His lungs were hurt, his back was stiff, and he was having trouble breathing. They did not have an ambulance close. You can't get to the hospital quickly. Nancy helped him inside, wrapped him in blankets, and kept a close eye on him. But Tom was different, even as he tried to get better. Don't think this was just another bump or ache. This was more. Tom had a hard time walking for a few days after that. He used to be able to lift firewood without much trouble. It got hard to do simple things. He always got better quickly, but this time the pain didn't go away. The fall also made him doubt himself. The man who had lived through grizzly bear country, freezing blizzards, and decades of being alone was now afraid to climb a ladder. He finally agreed to go to a clinic a little farther away. The doctors said it was true. Some of his bones were broken and his lungs were cracked. Treatment wasn't necessary right away, but rest and treatment were very important. At the same time, Tom found it very hard to accept rest. He wasn't the same when he got home. He moved more slowly. He did not talk as much. His once brave spirit seemed to have faded. It was the first time that Tom Orr thought about whether this was the end of his life in the Ya. This is where the real sadness happens. Not only because it hurts your body, but also because you know that a dream you lived for might finally be coming to an end. The scar from the event wouldn't go away as winter went on. They had always known that living in the mountains is hard, but now they know how dangerous it can be. Their thoughts were cloudy with so many questions. What if Tom fell again? What if Nancy wasn't there to help? They didn't have any kids or neighbors that were close enough to hear them. Tom learned that he wasn't unbeatable after the accident. She was in danger, no matter how much he loved the wild. But she was getting old and had been strong, loyal, and brave. She needed warmth, safety, and a break from always being afraid of what might happen. The painful joints, the long winters, and the health scares were all signs that Tom and Nancy should not have ignored for years. They said it was because they were getting older, but they both knew they were going too far. So they started to really think about leaving the mountains and retiring somewhere more near people. It wasn't easy for him to make this choice. The wilds of Montana had been home for more than 40 years. He felt at peace, proud, and like he had a reason for living there. But now every day with snow was a risk. Every job came with a risk. It was time to think about a different kind of life, even though he didn't want to. Tom and his wife made the hard choice right then to leave the mountains. Fans of Mountain Men noticed something after the 9th season. Tom Orr was no longer a regular on the show. He hadn't left or said anything important. He was slowly dying. People who watched were left with questions. Why isn't he on as many shows?